Welcome the spicy ladies. Strong women don't have attitudes, they have standards. If you're the kind of woman who walks into a room and shifts the energy without saying a word, you already know you're different. You don't beg for attention, yet you have it. You don't chase validation, yet people crave yours. You live by your own rules, and that alone makes some men act strange. See, most men are used to women who seek approval, who play along, who follow a script. But you rewrite the script entirely, and that unsettles them. It's not that they don't like you. They're just not sure how to handle someone who doesn't need them to feel complete. Some will try too hard to impress you. Others will try to test you, waiting for a reaction that never comes. A few will convince themselves you're too much, just because they're not enough. And then there are those who will admire you from a distance, knowing they can't match your level. But here's the truth. Their reaction has nothing to do with you, and everything to do with them. Your presence exposes what they lack, and that's not your burden to carry. So if men start acting weird around you, take it as proof that you are indeed a Sigma woman and keep being exactly who you are. Number 1, they try to humble you subtly. Some men won't outright challenge you. They're too smart for that. Instead, they'll try to bring you down in ways so subtle, so wrapped in casual jokes or concern, that if you weren't sharp, you might even thank them for their input. But make no mistake, these aren't harmless comments. They're calculated moves to shrink you just enough so they can feel bigger. You say you started your own business, and they smirk. That's cute. But you know how risky those things are, right? You mention you're not in a rush to settle down, and they chuckle. Yeah, but don't wait too long. Men don't like women who are too independent. You talk about your achievements, and they roll their eyes. Relax. It's not like you cured cancer. It's a quiet battle, a test to see if they can make you second-guess yourself, because deep down, they know you don't need their approval, and that unsettles them. See, most people are used to women seeking validation, looking for reassurance, needing to be told they're good enough. But you walk into a room already knowing your worth. And when a man who's not secure in himself meets a woman like you, he only has 2 choices: rise to the occasion or pull you down. Many will choose the latter. But here's the thing, your confidence is not arrogance. Your independence is not defiance. Your ambition is not a threat. So when they try to humble you with those little jabs, don't shrink. Don't soften your edges to make them more comfortable. Smile. Let them expose their own insecurities, because a man who truly respects strength doesn't try to weaken it. He admires it. And the ones who can't handle you, they were never strong enough to stand beside you in the first place. Number 2, they assume you must be broken. Some men can't handle rejection, especially when it comes from a woman who isn't bitter, angry, or scorned, just completely uninterested. Instead of accepting that you're simply not impressed by their usual charm tactics, they create a more comfortable narrative. You must be broken. They'll say things like, "Who hurt you?" as if the only possible reason you're not swooning over them is because some tragic heartbreak ruined you. They assume a past relationship left you cold, guarded, and unwilling to trust again. But the truth is, you see through the games and you have zero interest in playing. It's almost amusing. Men who are used to emotionally needy women can't fathom a woman who is whole on her own. To them, female independence is unnatural. There must be a reason for it, right? Because in their world, women either crave validation or are recovering from a man who failed them. The idea that you simply don't need their approval doesn't fit their understanding of how things should work. And when you tell them you're not broken, that you've simply chosen to live life on your own terms, they don't believe you. They convince themselves you're in denial, because admitting that you're just not drawn to their shallow tactics would mean they have to change, and many aren't willing to do that. But here's what they don't understand. You are not avoiding love. You are avoiding nonsense. You don't tolerate breadcrumbs, mixed signals, or men who need to conquer you to feel validated. You're not broken, you're evolved. And if they can't handle a woman who knows exactly who she is and what she wants, that's not your problem. Let them assume whatever makes them feel better. Meanwhile, you'll keep living life unapologetically, not as someone who needs fixing, but as someone who was never lost in the first place. Number 3, they try to impress you with power moves. Some men think they can win you over with a display of power, flashing their wealth, name-dropping important people, or talking endlessly about their achievements. They assume that if they show you just how important they are, you'll be drawn in. But here's the funny part, you don't care. You see, most women are conditioned to admire men based on their status. Society teaches them to be impressed by money, power, and connections. So when a man meets you, a woman who isn't easily swayed by material things, it confuses him. He spent years perfecting his ability to impress, yet none of it seems to work on you. That's a hit to his ego. He takes you to an expensive restaurant and expects you to be dazzled, but you're more interested in the depth of the conversation than the price of the wine. He brags about his six-figure income, but you're more curious about what kind of man he is outside of his paycheck. He flexes his luxury car, and you're silently wondering if he even knows who he is without these things. And that's where the disconnect happens. He's looking for admiration. You're looking for substance. The irony is, the more he tries to impress you with external things, the less impressive he becomes, because what really makes a man stand out isn't his net worth. It's his mindset, confidence without arrogance, strength without control, power without the need for validation. A man who truly knows his worth doesn't have to prove it. And that's the type of man you'd respect. So while he's busy performing, trying to convince you he's the man, you're already checked out, because real attraction isn't built on power moves, it's built on authenticity. And if he doesn't have that, no amount of money, status, or luxury can make up for it. Number 4, they try to fix you. Some men have this strange idea that a woman who doesn't conform to their expectations must be broken. They assume that if you're independent, emotionally controlled, and uninterested in playing the usual dating games, something must have happened to you. You must have been hurt before. You must have trust issues. Or worse, you just haven't met the right man yet. And so they take it upon themselves to fix you. They'll drop little comments like, "You should let a man take care of you," or "You don't always have to be so strong." They say it with a smirk, as if they're offering you some kind of wisdom. But in reality, what they're really saying is, "I don't know how to handle a woman who doesn't need me, so I need to make you doubt yourself." Some will even frame it as concern. "You should soften up, be more approachable, stop being so guarded." But let's be brutally honest, they're not trying to help you. They're trying to make you more manageable. They're used to women who respond to flattery, dominance, or emotional manipulation. Women who are conditioned to seek approval, to adjust their personalities to fit a man's comfort. But when they meet you, a woman who isn't fazed by their charm or authority, it disrupts their entire sense of control. The truth is, you don't need fixing. There's nothing to heal, nothing to change, nothing to adjust so that you fit into someone else's outdated mold of femininity. You've simply stepped outside of the game they know how to play, and that terrifies them. So let them try, let them talk, let them convince themselves that they're helping you, because the real irony is the only person who needs fixing is them. Number 5, they act like they don't care until you ignore them. At first, they act unfazed, unbothered, like they couldn't care less whether you acknowledge them or not. It's a defense mechanism, a way to protect their ego in case you don't give them the reaction they want. So they'll put on a cool front, maybe they'll keep conversations short, act distracted when you speak, or give off that too busy to care energy. It's all calculated. They want you to notice their disinterest. It's a test to see if you'll chase, if you'll try to earn their attention, if you'll crack under the weight of their indifference. But here's where it all backfires, because you're not playing. You don't seek validation. You don't waste energy trying to prove your worth. If someone acts like they don't care, you take it at face value and move on. No second guesses, no hidden hopes. And that's when the panic sets in. The moment they realize you're not affected by their act, the entire dynamic shifts. Suddenly, they start lingering around more, finding excuses to talk to you, throwing subtle bids for your attention. Their texts come quicker. Their eyes search for yours in the room. The same man who once played it cool is now trying desperately to undo his own strategy. Why? Because indifference is a mirror. It forces them to confront the truth. They wanted control, not connection. And when that control slips through their fingers, it shakes them to their core. So let them play their little game. Let them pretend they're too detached to care, because the second you stop noticing them, they'll make sure you do. Number 6, they get visibly frustrated when they can't figure you out. Most men are used to women being emotionally predictable. They expect certain reactions: interest when they show charm, eagerness when they flash status, frustration when they pull away. It's a script they've seen play out 100 times. Then they meet you. You don't react the way they expect. You don't feed their ego. You don't get flustered when they act distant. And you definitely don't rearrange your emotions to fit their expectations. And that drives them insane. At first, they'll act intrigued. They'll watch you closely, thinking they just need time to figure you out. But time passes, and the mystery remains. You don't chase, you don't seek approval, and you don't fall into the usual patterns they rely on to feel in control. That's when the frustration kicks in. You'll see it in the little things: the way their tone shifts when they realize their charm isn't working, the way they push for a reaction and get nothing, the way their patience wears thin because they can't categorize you. You're not playing hard to get, you're just impossible to box in. And that's a nightmare for men who thrive on knowing the rules of the game, because how do you control the narrative when the other person refuses to play by the script? The truth is, their frustration has nothing to do with you. It's about them, their need for predictability, for control, for validation. When you don't give it to them, they have to sit with the discomfort of not being the center of your world. And that for them is unfamiliar territory. So let them squirm. Let them overthink. Let them run in circles trying to dissect what makes you different, because the most powerful thing you can do is stay exactly as you are. Number 7, they try to break your independence with fake vulnerability. Some men have figured out that dominance doesn't work on you. Flashing wealth, status, or confidence doesn't make you bat an eye. And acting aloof just makes you lose interest faster. So when all else fails, they switch tactics. They try vulnerability, but not the real kind. No, this is strategic vulnerability, a carefully designed performance meant to lower your guard. They'll suddenly open up about deep insecurities, past heartbreaks, or personal struggles, not because they trust you, but because they want to make you trust them. They think it's a shortcut to emotional control, that if they expose their wounds, you'll feel obligated to do the same. That if they show weakness, you'll instinctively step in to comfort them, and most importantly, let them in. The irony is you see right through it. You've been around long enough to know the difference between genuine openness and manipulation, disguised as honesty. Real vulnerability is unguarded, messy, and comes with no expectations, but this feels rehearsed, timed, like a baited hook waiting for you to bite. And when you don't, that's when the cracks start to show. You'll notice how their vulnerability disappears the moment they don't get what they want, how their openness was only ever a tool, not a true connection, and how instead of accepting that you're not easy to sway, they get frustrated like a magician whose trick just got exposed. The truth is, your independence isn't something that needs breaking. You don't withhold emotions out of fear. You're just selective, intentional. You don't pour your energy into people who expect vulnerability instead of earning it. So let them try. Let them share their sad stories and look at you expectantly, waiting for you to unravel, because the real test isn't whether a man can open up. It's whether he can handle the fact that you won't open up just because he wants you to. Number 8, they assume you're bitter or too picky. When a man realizes he doesn't meet your standards, he has 2 choices: level up or make excuses. And most of the time, he'll take the easy way out by convincing himself and anyone who will listen that you're the problem. Instead of admitting that he's not bringing anything of real value to the table, he'll label you as too picky. He'll tell himself that your standards are unrealistic, rather than acknowledging that he simply doesn't measure up. Because let's be honest, self-reflection is hard. It's much easier to call you bitter, difficult, or impossible to please than to actually do the work to become a better man. And it doesn't stop there. He'll start rewriting the narrative in his head, because in his mind, there has to be something wrong with you. The idea that you simply don't want what he's offering is too much for his ego to handle. So he'll try to turn it into a flaw. He might even say things like, "You just haven't met the right guy yet." Here's the truth. Having standards doesn't make you difficult, it makes you self-respecting. The real issue isn't that you're too picky. It's that most men have been conditioned to believe that women should be grateful for any attention they receive. And when they come across someone who knows her worth, someone who won't settle for mediocrity, it terrifies them. So they call you bitter, they call you unrealistic, but deep down, they know the truth. You're not the problem, they just don't qualify. Number 9, they push boundaries just to see if you'll react. Some men can't stand the fact that you're unshakable. They're used to women reacting, whether it's through frustration, seeking approval, or playing along with their games. But you don't give them that satisfaction, and that's exactly why they start pushing boundaries. It starts subtly, a passive-aggressive comment disguised as a joke, a slight invasion of your personal space to see if you'll flinch. Maybe they'll challenge your opinions in a way that's not about discussion, but about dominance, watching closely to see if they can crack your composure. When none of that works, they escalate. They'll try to provoke you emotionally, throwing out subtle insults masked as constructive criticism. They'll bring up topics designed to get under your skin, hoping for even the smallest sign of irritation. Not because they care about what they're saying, but because they desperately want to see you lose control. Why? Because they need a reaction to feel powerful. If they can get you to snap, they'll convince themselves that they've won, that they've pulled you down to their level, that for a moment they had an effect on you. And if they can't, that frustrates them even more. They'll start to wonder, why isn't she reacting? Why doesn't she care? But here's the thing, you do care, just not about their games. You see what they're doing. You recognize the manipulation tactics. And instead of giving them the emotional response they crave, you do something even more powerful. You stay completely unfazed. Because silence, indifference, that stings more than any argument ever could. And when they realize they can't shake you, when they see that all their efforts have only made them look weak, that's when the frustration turns into defeat. Number 10, they make you their personal challenge. Some men can't handle the fact that you don't seek their approval. You don't chase, you don't fall for cheap charm, and you don't rearrange your life just to accommodate their presence. To them, this isn't just unusual, it's unacceptable. So, they turn you into a personal challenge. It's not about genuine connection. It's not about respect. It's about winning. They convince themselves that if they can tame you, if they can get you to soften, to become more dependent, to need their validation, then they've proven something to themselves, to their ego, maybe even to the people around them. It's a competition that exists entirely in their own head, and they're determined to win. At first, they'll test the waters, maybe they'll act indifferent, waiting to see if you'll seek them out. When that doesn't work, they'll switch to subtle dominance, trying to insert themselves into your life, offering unsolicited advice on what you should be doing, seeing how much influence they can have over you. And if that still doesn't work, they escalate. They'll start playing mind games, pushing emotional buttons, anything to shake your self-assurance. Because to them, your strength is the obstacle standing between them and their victory. What they don't realize is that you already saw it coming. You recognize the pattern, the subtle shifts in behavior, the way their interest isn't about who you are, but what it means if they can win you over. And that's why it never works, because you're not resisting for the sake of it. You're simply not playing their game. The real irony is, the harder they try, the more obvious their weakness becomes. A truly confident man doesn't need to conquer a strong woman to feel powerful. Only insecure men do. And the moment you spot the game, it's already over. Number 11, they assume you're lonely because you don't need them. There's a strange assumption some men make when they meet a woman who stands firmly on her own 2 feet. The moment they realize you're not actively seeking their validation, attention, or approval, they default to one conclusion: you must be lonely. They'll ask, "Don't you get lonely?" with a mix of pity and confusion, as if solitude is a punishment rather than a choice, as if the only way a woman can be truly happy is if she's wrapped up in a man's world. It's almost amusing because what they fail to understand is this: you're alone, not lonely. There's a massive difference. You're comfortable in your own company. You don't need constant chatter to fill the silence, nor do you rely on external validation to feel whole. Your peace comes from within, not from clinging to someone else. And that's where the misunderstanding happens. They mistake independence for isolation. You see, many men are used to women who seek emotional security in relationships, women who feel incomplete without a partner. So when they meet you, someone who enjoys solitude, thrives in her independence, and doesn't need them to feel fulfilled, it throws them off balance. And that's when the little remarks start. You just haven't met the right guy yet. A strong woman like you must get tired of doing everything alone. One day you'll want someone to take care of you. But here's the thing. They're projecting because deep down, they know that without constant admiration, without someone relying on them, they would feel lost. They assume you must feel the same. What they don't realize is that you've mastered something they never have, being whole on your own. So when they try to paint your solitude as sadness, let them. Their words say more about them than they do about you. At the end of the day, the way men act around you has nothing to do with who you are and everything to do with who they are. Not you. You don't bend to expectations. You don't seek validation. You don't play the games they've mastered with others, and that's exactly why they don't know how to handle you. Some will try to impress you. Some will try to test you. Others will attempt to undermine you, but none of it changes one simple truth. Your presence alone forces them to confront their own insecurities. That's what makes you a Sigma female. You are not cold, you are selective. You are not bitter, you are aware. You are not difficult, you are self-respecting. Men will call you intimidating when what they really mean is you can't be controlled. They will label you too independent, too picky, or too distant because they can't stand the fact that you belong to yourself. But here's what you need to remember. You are not here to make anyone comfortable. The world has tried to convince women that they need to shrink themselves, soften their edges, and accept whatever attention they're given. But you know better. You don't need to be fixed. You don't need to lower your standards. You don't need to explain or justify who you are to anyone. The right people, the ones who are strong, secure, and truly valuable, will never feel threatened by your strength. They won't try to humble you, compete with you, or break you down just to feel bigger. They will stand beside you as equals. Until then, stay exactly as you are, unapologetic, unshaken, unstoppable. Thank you for watching The Spicy Ladies, and God bless you.